I'm Russ White for MSU Today with Spartans Athletic Director Bill Beekman. And Bill, as we record on April 23rd, we're in our sixth week of working remotely. In many ways, it feels much longer for a lot of people. So much has changed in that relatively short period of time. How do you prepare for the future when information and the situation constantly change?
Well, Rush, you're absolutely right. It's been on the one hand, it feels like we've been in this mode forever. On the other hand, it's in the greater scheme of things, it's been a relatively short period of time. Um, but the watchword of so much of what we're doing is that as Dr. Fauci now has famously said, really the virus controls the timeline, and there are things that we can do to try and impact that. Staying at home, obviously, being a key factor right now, but really, the virus will control the timeline at some level, and so what we've been working very hard to do is really to do two things simultaneously. On the one hand, at MSU Athletics, we're working hard to make sure that we're ready, for whenever we can get closer to our normal operations or to a new normal in operations. So we've got people out making sure that the fields are in good shape, that our softball and baseball and soccer and football and other fields are appropriately maintained, and we've got and yet on the other hand, we've got a whole crew of people that are working very, very hard to make sure that our student athletes are taken care of, and they're spread across the globe. 800 young men and women who are some still in East Lansing, some across the country, others living in international places. That they have the tools they need to stay in shape, both mentally and physically. This week they're completing their exams, and we're making sure that they've got all kinds of tools to stay in good physical health, good mental health, and complete their academic work as scheduled. And then really there's so much we don't know that we just have to plan for as many options as we think reasonably possible. I spent about an hour and a half on the phone this morning in a Big Ten conference call with my fellow athletic directors and the Big Ten head football coaches, along with some of our senior advisory staff in terms of the medical health and experts on the coronavirus. And we've been really trying to think through what are the options for coming back in the context of football. And I think at this point we've got seven different possible scenarios or themes that could take place. The first of which, of course, is starting on time and as normal. But looking really at every different option and then trying to think 2, 3, 4 chess moves down the board, because invariably what we're faced with at the end of the day will be something different than we're thinking about now, and there will be factors and issues that we may not be able to anticipate. But that means we've just got to work harder to think through every issue that we possibly can, so that we're ready and taking care of the things we're aware of, and we can spend that much more time on the things that pop up and crop up that we might not have been thinking about. So really, it's kind of like when a hurricane during hurricane season, and they show this sort of oval shaped thing, 500 miles off the coast of Florida or the Carolinas. And then there's a kind of a funnel shape that shows that it could go several hundred miles north, or it could go 700 or several hundred miles south. You don't quite know where it's going to hit, but kind of it's going to be somewhere in that vicinity. And then as it gets closer and closer, that funnel narrows and narrows to the point where you pretty much know where it's going to hit. Well, I think we're in this scenario still kind of 500 miles offshore, and that funnel is pretty big. And so we're trying to sort of get everyone prepared up and down the coast, so that whichever option we end up implementing, we're ready for it. And yet you want to get far enough down the road so that you're ready, but not too far down any road that you're getting stuck. So, it's just really a lot of talking and a lot of planning. And and one of the things that I think is very important is that those decisions and those plans are based on principles. And so from my perspective, I always encourage us as athletic directors when we're talking in the Big Ten to really make sure that before we get too far into the weeds in any idea, that we're comfortable that we know what the principles are. From my perspective at MSU, our first principle in every case is the health, safety, and well-being of our student athletes. Our second principle is that we're a student-focused organization trying to do what's in the best interests of our student athletes. And so those two principles guide what we do at MSU. But thinking about the principles that will guide our decision-making, hopefully very similar principles as we think about returning sports, hopefully in the fall and beyond.
Spartans Athletic Director Bill Beekman with me on MSU Today. Bill, and as you said, in such an unknown time, it's still probably important to think outside the box at the same time, right?
Absolutely. And so, as it relates to scheduling, we're thinking about, are there ways that this season we can play more competitions in the Midwest, under the theory, may or may not prove to be accurate, but under the theory that states adjacent to us will be more similarly situated in terms of their return to play dates or return to campus dates, and trying to maybe spend a little less time in competition on the East Coast or the West Coast, but trying to be as flexible as possible. Flexibility really is the watchword of the day, so that we can we can get our young people back in the fall academically, back athletically, and keep them safe and healthy as well.
Yeah. And Bill, talk some more about, obviously there are no games and practices, but that doesn't mean the department isn't working.
Right. Well, one of the things that I've been very excited about is how a number of our departments have been really working extraordinarily hard to meet the needs of our students while they're not on campus. And I'll give you one example. Our strength and conditioning team, and particularly the team that leads our Olympic sports, has been working very hard to get many of the exercises, the weightlifting techniques that they encourage our students to use, to get all of those things on a private a YouTube site. For compliance purposes, at this point, we can't make that information available to the world, but we can create a YouTube site that's specific and exclusive to our student athletes, so that they can sort of tune in and have sort of remote lessons, a remote guidebook for what a good exercise routine can be on any given day. And I think that what's really exciting about that is that there are some things that we're putting in place now that could make our program stronger, not just in this interim period, but could make our program stronger going forward as well. So there are tools and ideas and processes in terms of strength and conditioning, nutrition, athletic training, that we've had to, you hear the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. And there are things that we've had to invent along the way out of sheer necessity in this process. But many of those things, I think, will be able to then be parlayed into a stronger department when we do get to that new normal. And so strength and conditioning is one that's been, I think, very effective, and our student athletes appreciate those videos and that sort of online guidebook that helps them and reminds them what they ought to be doing and when, depending on their sport and their individual workout programs. But there are other examples in other facets of what we're doing as well. One other thing I'd mention is our academic support team. And typically we've got the really extraordinary Clarabelle Smith Center on campus, made possible by Steve Smith's generosity many years ago. And that's a home for student athletes to receive additional academic support. Well, of course, without students on campus now, that support has to be provided remotely through tools like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or other models. And I think as we debrief on this experience, we'll discover that many of those remote approaches are things that we may be able to implement on a more regular basis when we have teams traveling, for example, and how we think about students when they're remote, even though they're sort of in the midst of their season. So I'm excited that there are some silver linings in all of this that will make our athletic department stronger and better over the long run.
Yeah, well said, Bill Beekman. And tell us a little bit more about the conversations your athletic director colleagues and your presidents are having. And I think particularly people are starting to wonder about maybe football season, contingency plans, which you touched on. But what more can you say about what you're talking about these days?
Well, the Big Ten athletic directors, the 14 of us, meet just about every weekday morning. Some of those calls run a half hour, others an hour and a half or longer. And we've really been working with our colleagues at the conference office to think about what we can do to make the conference stronger as we anticipate the fall. And at Michigan State, we're first and foremost an academic institution. Our primary consideration is getting our 50,000 students back on campus, and it's my great hope that in one fashion or another we can do that. And certainly, sitting here towards the end of April, there's a lot of time and a lot of circumstance and a lot to happen between now and then. But that would certainly be my great hope. And assuming we can do that, then we can move on next to our 800 student athletes and getting them back in the groove of their academics first and their sports second. And so as athletic directors, we're spending a lot of time thinking through changes in NCAA rules that the NCAA is recommending in this context, or changes that we want to propose to help us through what we're going through. It's one of those circumstances where the rules were never really designed to accommodate a pandemic. So a lot to think through.
Bill, Michigan State's athletic budget does not receive general fund dollars. So what are some of the budget discussions going on in athletics, and what happened financially when the NCAA men's basketball tournament was canceled?
Well, you're right, Russ. That's, I think, an important point, and one that is very, very, I think, very important to me. There are about 25 or so athletic departments in the United States that really receive no funding from their university, and MSU is very proud to be one of those departments. So the tuition revenue that the university receives, the state appropriations that the university receive, not one penny of that goes to the athletic department. We're completely self-sufficient, and we run on a separate budget. It's certainly still under the realm and auspices of our president and our board of trustees, but financially it's distinct, and that allows our university's academic resources to be focused on academics, which is something I'm very proud of. So our budget in athletics is about $140 million. And like every Big Ten school or every Autonomy 5 conference school, schools in the Pac-12 or the SEC, uh, our football revenue, it makes up over half of our department budget. So uh, so without football, we really are in a pickle, and we're in a very challenging environment. So what we've been doing is again, without knowing quite what's going to happen, trying to plan for as many scenarios as we can. We're working with our individual units and our individual sports in the department to really take a hard look at how we're spending money, what we're spending it on, where we can eliminate costs, thinking about things like contracts that we've got in place. And because we don't know quite when sports are going to start up, making sure that those contracts are cancelable without penalty, so that we can have the flexibility we need to have without leaving money on the table. Just really trying to to look under every darn rock that is out there to make sure that we're as efficient as we can possibly be. The university has implemented what they call a hiring chill, which means you can't. It's not that every hiring position is off the table, but boy, you've got to have a really good reason to hire someone at this point in time. And so we've implemented the same thing in athletics. We've got a hiring chill in place, trying to really take a hard look at any position being filled at this point in time. Taking a hard look at our travel, thinking about, are there ways to travel more efficiently, maybe staying on this side of the Mississippi for a year, a little bit less travel for some of our teams out to the West Coast, just because it's far less expensive. Thinking about scheduling more competitions on weekends rather than midweek. If we travel a team midweek, we're concerned with a Wednesday night competition about getting our student athletes back home for Thursday classes. But if we schedule a Saturday night competition, we can come back on Sunday and come back maybe at a little bit more leisurely pace, making sure that our student athletes have time to study on Sunday and then ultimately get to class first thing Monday morning, having had a full night's rest. So trying to do things that create win-wins that maybe in terms of scheduling have been more challenging in the past for a variety of reasons, but the current financial situation gives us a reason across the conference to explore how we can do things a little more effectively, a little more efficiently, hopefully create some win-wins, and to be prepared for whatever the fall might bring us.
Yes, wrapping up a conversation with Spartans Athletic Director Bill Beekman, an update on all things MSU Athletics. And Bill, as we close, just, during these uncertain times, it can be easy to focus on the negative news and the tragic loss that so many Americans are suffering, either death or economic, or frankly, both. What inspires you and gives you hope, and what do you want Spartan Athletic supporters to keep in mind as we proceed through the pandemic?
Well, Russ, I do think it has been a tragic time in the history of our community, our country, our world. I think at this point, most everybody knows somebody that's been affected by this horrible virus. Many of us know people that have passed away as a result of the virus. And so my heart really does go out to everybody that's been impacted, that's had a family member or loved one or friend impacted by this, because I think we do at this point probably almost all know somebody that has been. And yet at the same time, I do think that in terms of the way I live my life, I'm a fairly optimistic person, and I'm always trying to find the silver lining in the gray cloud. And in the case of of what we're going through now, I think there are a number of real silver linings. In terms of our athletic department, I've just been extraordinarily impressed by the creativity, the entrepreneurship, the innovation, the resilience of our staff. Our team has just really pulled up their bootstraps and got to work, and are doing things that really there's no playbook. You're just sort of winging it based on your best judgment some of the time. There's no playbook for what you do here, so you go back to your principles. You try and make thoughtful decisions that are in the best interest of the department, and you push forward. And our team really has done that. In terms of our ticket office, we've never been selling tickets in a pandemic before, or thinking about how seasons will start. And so the work that they're doing to give people flexibility has been really, I think, very special and appreciated in the community. The work of our strength and conditioning and nutrition teams that I mentioned earlier, again, very creative and forward thinking, and developing practices that we'll be able to take and use even after this passes, that will make our department better. So I'm really my heart is warmed by the extraordinarily hard work of our team, the compassion that they bring to what they do, the creativity and resilience that they've exhibited, that I think will make MSU Athletics far stronger in the long run.
Hear, hear, Bill. Well, thanks for the update, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks so much, Russ. It's always a delight to talk with you on this great program, and we'll look forward to reconnecting soon.
You got it. That's Spartans Athletic Director Bill Beekman. Always find out more at msuspartans.com, and I'm Russ White for MSU Today.